Brady Poppinga joins us on the Deseret First Credit Union Hotline. Brady, welcome to BYU Sports Nation.
What's up, guys? Good morning. How you doing?
Hey, we are fantastic, man. It's an interesting weekend for sure. Let's start with the obvious question. What was your initial reaction when your Green Bay Packers drafted Jamaal Williams?
Well, I was elated. I mean, I've been saying it all along that it'd be a perfect fit there because I just, when you're around an organization long enough, you're around how they operate, you tend to get their tendencies as to who they look for and the type of players. And it just made a lot of sense to me that in that third, fourth, even maybe fifth, but fourth round area, that if Jamaal Williams was still available, that the Green Bay Packers, led by Ted Thompson and Elliott Wolf, would have made that pick, and that he would have been the one to go for. Because the one thing about them is they generally do not like to draft running backs high, because he understands how you can find a guy middle, late round, and get a ton of productivity out of him. He'd been doing it throughout pretty much his whole career. If you look at the Green Bay Packers, guys like James Starks, guys like Ryan Grant, that wasn't even drafted by the Packers. He's picked up off the roster, an undrafted free agent who had been tremendously productive running backs. But Jamaal fit the bill. And I do believe that they had him pegged as the guy that, like I said, if he was available, they're going to get. And the reason I think that is because they brought Joe Mixon in. They brought Joe Mixon in as a smokescreen because they knew it would bring up a lot of attention. Joe Mixon, the trouble running back out of Oklahoma, just for everybody's reference. They'd bring a lot of attention to him, which, again, would make it to where they wouldn't be thinking about Jamaal going to the Packers. So it's, again, one less team to worry about, because that's what the teams want to do. They try to gauge your demand in between quotations in the marketplace to then figure out where they need to draft you. So if you can hide a guy away, like the Packers were attempting to do as they're putting up this Joe Mixon smokescreen with Jamaal Williams, he'll be there where you feel like he's at a good value, and I think they got a tremendous value for him. And if I was in there too, I would have picked him that same exact spot, maybe even the first pick in the fourth round, either way. But tremendous pick, tremendous opportunity for Jamaal. And I'm going to tell you that Ted loves, and Ted's the general manager of the Packers, loves his draft picks. He is going to give Jamaal every opportunity to succeed. So expect Jamaal to be highly involved in that Packer offense.
And that's music to BYU fans' ears, given the situation with, say, Jimmer Fredette in the NBA and whatnot. So that's exciting. There's a BYU legacy with Green Bay Packers. You, Detmer, Bosco, McMahon, Soto, Robertson, Daniel. There have been others. What's it like to have another BYU guy specifically in Green Bay?
Well, it's great, man. I mean, it goes to show you that, Ted at least had a good enough experience with myself to where he continues to look at BYU as an opportunity to go draft guys, because I'm not going to name any names. But when I was coming out of BYU, I sat in I remember sitting in a Kansas City Chiefs meeting in the pre-draft combine meetings, talking to Dick Vermillion. He looked at me and he goes, "We don't look at you like a BYU guy." And I'm like, what? He's like, no. He's like, we look at BYU guys as soft. They're entitled. He's like, we don't look at you that way, because he's like, the guys that we've had experience with the BYU, other than John Tate, they like John Tate a lot, but other guys who they've evaluated and they graded, they said they didn't like them. And so they tended to stay away from BYU guys. And I thought, how crazy. So it's nice, and that's how a lot of teams think. I mean, Ohio State, as a matter of fact, for a number of years, had a bad rap because a guy like Bobby Carpenter didn't work out. People were questioning A.J. Hawk, and so if you were a linebacker from Ohio State, and it was James Laurinaitis, by the way, who I played with the Rams, who shared this information with me, he kept getting questions from the decision makers in the pre-draft combine interviews as to, well, what makes you different from all these other Ohio State linebackers that have not filled expectations. So the point is it's nice to know that Ted keeps looking at BYU, and he still thinks highly of the program, and he thinks highly of the guys that BYU produce. And this year, that's both Jamaal Williams and Taysom Hill, because one thing that people need to remember, the draft picks, they're going to get a lot of the attention, but when you walk into a program like the Green Bay Packers, like the New England Patriots, they don't value a first-rounder any more than they value an undrafted free agent as to how they can impact their team. The only reason why they pick one guy in the first round versus a guy in free agency, or they let him get to that undrafted free agency, is the market. It has nothing to do with how they believe that you can ultimately impact the team into the future. So even Taysom fits the bill as to the guy that the Packers love. They want to have enough to where they offered him an undrafted free agent contract.
Do you think that ideology surrounding BYU guys is the same, or has it changed since Dick Vermeil told you BYU guys were seen as soft and entitled?
It depends on who you talk to, I would say. I mean, like I said, with the Packers, I do believe that that's not the case with them. The Kansas City Chiefs, now with Andy Reid there, I would believe that's also not the case. But I do believe it's changed. That was one of the things that Bronco did so well, is he established a culture of toughness, of accountability, of, hey, you got to earn your keep. You're not going to be able to, you're not going to get anything. So I think Bronco really nipped that in the bud. And so I think, teams knew what they're getting now with BYU guys, as long as that culture continues to be preserved. But again, it's going to come down to experience. And the NFL is a copycat league. I mean, it's one of those deals to where, all of a sudden if, you get one player that some team drafts in the first round from one school and another in the same school, and they sort of don't pan out and they show a certain characteristic, everybody just looks at them like, well, I guess all guys, they sort of just, they just stroke that general broad brush of, I guess all guys from that school are like that, and that's how the NFL is. But I do believe it's different, the perception of BYU guys now than it was when I was coming out.
Fox Sports NFL analyst, BYU linebacker great, and Super Bowl champion with the Green Bay Packers, Brady Poppinga, with us on BYU Sports Nation. What is a realistic expectation for an output from the rookie running back Jamaal Williams in his first season?
Oh, realistic is, and you may think this is crazy, but you look at Jordan Howard with the Chicago Bears, the guy rushed for 1,300 yards. You look at Ezekiel Elliott with the Dallas Cowboys, 1,600 yards. Yeah, it sounds crazy, but it's not out of the question. And that's because he's playing with Aaron Rodgers. And teams, especially now that Jordy's doing really well, teams are going to fear that passing game. Then they added Martellus Bennett. You got Randall Cobb still there, and there's other guys like Devontae Adams that have emerged to where Jamal's going to see, and those running backs for the Packers are going to see more 7-man, 6-man soft, they call them, boxes than they would with any other team, which means that he's going to have more opportunities to where he's going to have numbers in his favor in terms of blockers, and I don't see why he wouldn't be extremely productive. And if the running game's working, Aaron and Mike McCarthy are they're going to continue to do it. Aaron's not so caught up with his stats that he's going to be like, well, oh, man, I haven't gotten my 150 yards for the half. Well, shoot, I better start passing the ball, even though they're still giving us a heck of a weak run defense, and our runners are just gashing them. No, they'll keep running the ball down their throats. So, honestly, a really realistic productivity level for Jamaal this year, I'd say anywhere from 1,000 to 1,500 yards.
Whoa.
And it's because he's in an ideal situation. But again, it's going to come down to his ability to show early on that he can be the guy because Ty Montgomery, you said it yourself. This isn't his forte. He's more of a change-up guy. Go in there and cause mismatches because he has the receiver's background. Jamaal is a better runner. He's an upgrade, and like I said, Ted wants Jamaal to be great because that's how Ted's validated. Talk about the general manager of the Green Bay Packers and all these general managers. That's how he's evaluated as a good talent guy, is that he can bring draft picks in and have them succeed. And the guys, I've seen this. Look back to 2005, a guy by the name of Sam Congato, who's nowhere near the running back of Jamaal Williams. Look at his productivity. Look at, in 2007, a guy by the name of Ryan Grant, who, again, was an undrafted free agent that we picked up in a trade with the New York Giants. We're just looking to get rid of him for a 7th rounder. Look at his productivity, over 1,000 yards. James Starks is another guy. These are all late-round, undrafted free agent guys who Jamaal is by far more talented than. So 1,000 to 1,500 yards is not out of the question, especially with Jamal's ability.
True or false, Jamaal Williams will be the starter in Week 1?
Ooh, I'm going to say false. They're going to make him earn it. And even if he's a little bit better, like I said, as an overall back, as Ty Montgomery, they're still going to show a it's technically going to be 2 tight end set with Lance Kendricks and Martellus Bennett. But I do believe as long as Ty Montgomery's a heck of a competitor too, they're going to trot out their Ty Montgomery as their starting running back. But in terms of touches and involvement in the game, Jamal is he's going to have just as much as any of the running backs, as long as he shows what we all know him to be, which I believe so, and as long as he stays healthy. But I don't believe he's just out of the gates going to be the starter. He's going to have to earn it, and they're going to keep that carrot dangling out in front of him, and he's going to respond to that, which is only going to make it to where they're going to keep him as sort of the guy coming off the bench. Until they just can't, afford to keep him on the bench for any much more than they are.
Brady, what I really want to know is your 10-second analysis in Spanish of Jamaal Williams to the Green Bay Packers.
Oh, yeah? Okay. Bueno, para que sepas, Jamaal Williams es un corredor muy talentoso, es muy versátil en muchos sentidos, es que él sale muy exitoso no solamente implementando esas corridas de la zona, pero también implementa esas corridas de fuerza. Así que él es uno de esos corredores multidimensionales que muchos de los equipos en la NFL en general a ellos les encanta tener porque hay muchas opciones con este tipo de jugador y me imagino que él va a tener una carrera excepcional a menos que él se mantenga saludable y a menos que él realice su potencial.
Yeah.
Hey, muy bien.
I agree.
Yeah, that was awesome.
I agree.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with especially that third statement. Yeah. I don't.
Well, wait, neither one of you guys served in a Spanish-speaking mission? What's up?
I speak Korean, Brady.
Portuguese.
So.
Oh, man. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
You guys missed out, man. But, hey, all good. I'm sure there's some Spanish speakers out there
You
as
better believe
listeners
it.
that could follow that.
That was fantastic. Okay, obviously there's a lot of attention on Taysom Hill, and he is the curious case, right? Because of his injury background, but his freak athletic skill set. What do you expect from Taysom Hill in Green Bay? Like, do you think that he's a guy that can either, one, make the 53-man roster or at least be on the practice squad when all is said and done?
Yeah, I mean, I look at it, like I said, I can sense how the Packers look at him. They look at him like this guy could either turn out to be the next Matt Hasselbeck. And what I mean by that is, obviously, unless Aaron has some catastrophic injury, and I'm knocking on wood here, they're not looking for a guy to replace Aaron. But what they're looking for is obviously a guy they can develop, that Aaron can help develop, as he's done with Brett Hundley. They've been able to develop him enough to where they're getting some trade interest for him. And that's what they look at Taysom as a guy that can bring some depth to the position. And if he becomes the guy who they all believe he can, that here in the next 3 to 4 years, they can trade him off to another team as a starter and get assets in return, whether that's draft picks or other players. And that's what they're looking to do with Taysom, and that's what they believe they can do with him. But again, if he comes in and he's a little slow to learn their system, I have no question that have no problem, as long as Taysom doesn't get picked up on another team, putting him on their practice squad at the very least. So I think he's a guy they look at as a project. Mike McCarthy prides himself in developing quarterbacks, and if you look at Mike McCarthy's history of Rich Gannon, Joe Montana, Aaron Brooks, with who by the way was started off as a backup to Brett Favre, who ended up being a starter with the New Orleans Saints, who they did trade off. Brett Favre himself, Aaron. He's got quite the history of developing quarterbacks, and when you got that kind of history and you look at a guy like Taysom with all that ability, and all the quarterbacks, coaches and gurus across the NFL feel the same way. They're like, I could take that guy and turn him into something special. So they're going to give him every opportunity to develop, and he couldn't be in a better situation because it's similar. The offense is similar at Green Bay to what he did already with Ty, so he's going to have some familiarity, not with the terminology, but more with what they're asking him to do instead of being under center and doing all those kinds of things. But then also he's going to be in the same meeting room as Aaron, and he's going to see how the great ones do it firsthand. And that was valuable for Aaron. Aaron saw that with Brett, and there's no Aaron Rodgers as we know him today without Brett Favre. And so Taysom's going to have that same opportunity to sit and listen and observe what Aaron does, take some of the stuff that he does well that he can feel like he can implement. And if he's smart about it and he stays healthy, which that's going to come down to his ability to be proficient in the pocket. And also when he does run, because you just can't cut the guy's legs out from under him. You're going to have to let him run. He's going to have to learn to get out of bounds, slide, doing some of the things that he did last year. I think he's got a heck of an opportunity because let's be honest. I mean, you look at his physical attributes, and this even goes into throwing the ball. He is by far the most talented quarterback that BYU has ever had physically. And I mean, and you look at the guys they produced, Jim McMahon, Steve Young, the list. I mean, that's one heck of a statement, and that shows you the potential he has, and that's why he's got one heck of an opportunity, and he's in a perfect situation to realize that potential. So it's going to come down to him staying healthy, and we'll see what happens. But I believe that there's a wonderful opportunity for him to become a starter, not with the Packers, but eventually with some other team down the road.
The Green Bay Packers get Taysom Hill on a discount double check. Brady, Poppinga, it has been fantastic. We need to do this again soon.
You got it, guys. You know where to find me, and it was my pleasure.
All right, Brady Poppinga on the Deseret First Credit Union Hotline. Deseret First, your values, your timeline, your financial future.
Always bringing it.